So the question is, how do I find out how many recurring donors we have across all fundraising campaigns? So thanks so much for writing in. So this came from a not-for-profit who has multiple fundraising campaigns in addition to just year-round fundraising and year-round events. Got it, Hector. Love it. So in this situation, what I typically recommend for not-for-profits is two things. One, to have class tracking set up. In what QuickBooks is called class tracking, in Xero it's called tracking categories. Have a class or a tracking category for your functional expenses. Now, if your company is large enough to have an audit, you're going to need that anyhow, and this is the quickest and easiest way to make that happen. Regardless, you're going to need it for your not-for-profit's Form 990, which is the tax form that a not-for-profit files every year. I'm going somewhere with this, with the recurring donors. So for the classes, you're going to want to have a class or tracking category for your functional expense categories, which are administrative, fundraising, and programs. It's the fundraising one that I have a special interest in right now because of this question, that I suggest that you create subcategories of your fundraising class or your fundraising tracking category in Xero for each fundraising campaign that you have. So the reason why I'm mentioning that is I would not use your class field or your tracking category for recurring donors because it's a much better use of that field and the technology to use for your fundraising campaigns and your functional expense categories. What I do recommend is that if you're using QuickBooks, you use the customer type field, and when you open up the customer, you go to the customer type field and say, is this donor a one-time or recurring donor? If you are doing fundraising in your company such that a person could be a recurring donor but also give a one-time donation, then don't use the customer type field. Instead, use the item field. And this applies both to Xero and to QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. Using the item field and having a sub-item for every donor, one-time and recurring. So that's one of the things that's available to you. You can use use the item in your item list, and you can also create a sub-name in your customers list, one for one-time and one for recurring. So you have a couple of different techniques available to you. For this particular not-for-profit, or better said, look at the different ways that people can use this information and how they're going to be pulling reports. So if you're using items for something else, for example, for donation levels, then you won't want to use the items for recurring versus one-time. But if you're not using, silver membership versus bronze versus platinum, if you're not using that for anything else, you can certainly use it for recurring versus one-time donations. You can also create sub-customers of a certain donor to indicate one-time versus recurring donations. The kicker here is all this is the setup. What you do after the donations are recorded is run some reports based on this information. So both QuickBooks and QuickBooks Online plus Xero, you can run reports based on the item field. You can run reports based on certain customers. All that information is available for you just in terms of filters and such when you run those reports. So then run the report and simply do a count. There's no system that I know of in the small business world that simply spits out a report that says how many. So you really have to look at the report of the donations over a certain period of time and then see for yourself how many.